Well, I was going for a routine dental procedure, and I was almost 29 years old, happily married, and had a beautiful 2.5-year-old baby. And just took myself to the dentist for a regular procedure, and I was in the dentist chair and given nitrous oxide, laughing gas.
Yep.
And the first thing I knew, I was lying back in the dentist chair, and the next thing I knew, I was up in the corner of the room looking down at my inert body, and I felt no fear. I felt no anxiety. And as I looked at my body, I really felt a fondness for it. I knew this body, but I knew that I was not that body. And I felt an old familiarity with it, but as though it was ready to be tossed off and go to the Salvation Army.
Wow.
It was well used and well loved. But I didn't need it back. I didn't want it back. But the dentist was frantically working on me, and I was trying to communicate. I was trying to talk to the dentist. The dentist didn't hear me. And I just looked at my body with kind of a fond detachment. And I had no sense of time, so I don't know how long I was up there in the corner of the room.
Yeah.
But the next thing that I was aware of was that I was entering a tunnel, and my mother, who had been dead for 15 years, was right at the entrance to the tunnel with her arms out. Oh. And she was whole, and she was beautiful, vibrant, and healed. She was healed, and that was really important because she did not die whole and vibrant and thriving in this way. Yeah. And I saw her, and I knew it was her, and I went into her, and I was not able to say goodbye when she died. She died suddenly and unexpectedly. And I communicated with her telepathically, so it was as though I thought and she received, and she thought and I received. I heard it inside of this being, whatever this I was now. Right. And I said to her, "I love you." And she said, "I know." In such a way that the energy went around me like her arms. And I said, "I miss you." And she said, "I know." And what I knew in that communication was that all those things every single day of my life that I had wanted to tell her or I had wanted to ask her, I already had. What I knew is that she had always been with me, and there had never been any separation between us. And I knew that she knew that I loved her. And all those years I had felt so guilty that I had not been able to say goodbye. And I was 13 years old and a typical teenager, wanting distance and independence. And I had felt so guilty, as though really there was a part of my 13-year-old brain that felt so despair doesn't even come close to it, but as though she had died believing that her only daughter didn't love her because I had told her that. So in this moment of communication, that was healed. I didn't touch it.
Was there a smell to it? Was there a smell, an odor?
No, I didn't smell. I didn't have that sense open to me. But I did hear.
Right.
And I heard this music that was just incredible.
And this is where you heard the music, or did the music continue throughout the whole thing?
I would say I was aware of it in the tunnel.
Okay. Well, let's talk about that now. You found some music that reminds you of it?
Yes. So that was an interesting story. My husband and I were going into one of those nature stores, and we were walking in, and all of a sudden he turns to me and says, "What is wrong with you?" And I'm not feeling any distress. I said, "What? Nothing." And he said, "Well, big crocodile tears were rolling down my face." So I paused for a moment, and I listened, and I heard this music, and it had just washed over me. And triggered this response.
Yeah.
And I went up to the counter and I said, "What is that music?" And she told me. I bought it, and I have been using it ever since for the past 30 years. When I work with dying patients, when I'm doing some calming and healing exercises with them. And so, not surprisingly, the music is called Angels of Comfort.